numbers. It's time for episode 57. Get yourself a bottle of ketchup, and remember, they're Heinz. There are no other kinds. And welcome to the 57th episode of the Digital to Dice podcast. I'm Ron. Dave is busy delivering pineapple pizza to Aunt Becky and wherever specialized hotel, living facility where she's going to hole up for a while. So Dave is visiting her. Actually, it's all good things with Dave. He's gone back to work full time pretty much, and so we're going to let him get back into the swing of things before he comes back. We got a couple of interviews lined up, and Dave's actually started a game again. So the next time we talk about what Dave and I said together about what game are we playing, Dave's got some new stuff to share and all that. So hopefully that will be as soon as this week. But Dave, as I said, is trying to get back into the swing of work things. He's been busy at the rink, doing some roughing, doing a bit of skating, and all good things. So I'm pinch hitting by myself again, and we got, I think, an interesting topic today. We're going to delve deep into how baseball game engines may or may not work, and based on a comment I got from a viewer of mine at the end of my 1978 baseball replay. So that's what we got in store for you, but first, I already did the Aunt Becky joke. What am I playing? Well, finished my 1978 baseball regular season replay on Retro Sports Network, and you'll be glad to know that 3 of the 4 teams that made it in real life made it into my playoffs, which start Sunday the 27th on Twitch TV, or not TV, / Retro Sports Network. The National League Championship Series will be a replay of the real McCoy. It'll be the Dodgers and the Phillies, with games 1 and 2 from Philadelphia, and games 3, 4, and 5, if needed, from the friendly confines of Dodger Stadium, because it was done by a division system back then, not based on best record, because the Phillies had the best record in all of baseball. The surprise or so comes from the American League. The Yankees won the American League East on the last day of the season. They finally outlasted the Baltimore Orioles. In fact, the Yankees dropped 2 to Cleveland just to force a game 162. And so the Yankees took care of business, but they're going to play, instead of the Kansas City Royals like they did in real life, it'll be the Texas Rangers. And interesting that my friend David Baseball Demos, who was doing the 1977 season, had the Texas Rangers win the West in 77. I got them winning the West in 78. John Matlack and Fergie Jenkins did the job, and they will play a best of 5 against the Yankees. First 2 games in Texas, and the last 3, how many of those might be needed, we don't know. At least one will be in Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. So doing that, I'm also doing some Tennis Elbow Manager, because I like that. It's kind of if you're familiar with Tennis Elbow, the game, which is kind of an arcadey tennis game, I play really well at that. But the Tennis Elbow Manager is you get to manage, obviously, a player, either male or female, and there's quite a few years to choose from. You can choose a real player with a scrambled name or create your own character. I created myself because, I am the world's best tennis player ever if I'm playing doubles. Singles, not so much. So having some fun with that, playing some of my 81-82 Oilers replay, and I'll grab the new version of Stratomatic PC Hockey at some point in the near future. The Islanders continue to be great. The 81-82 Oilers couldn't play defense if their life depended on it. Although Grant Fuhrer has a very good card. Speaking of hockey cards, my friend Bobby sent me a picture of the original edition of Strat, the 77-78 cards for both Guy Lafleur and Ken Dryden. The original goalie cards for Strat Hockey actually had them in 3 different columns: outside, inside, and rebound breakaway. And on Kenny Dryden's card, you cannot score on him on that. It's 1 through 20, he's a save and a rebound, which means that there's a few more automatic goals on the skater cards as opposed to the goalie cards. Now you wouldn't have that. Although I'm not sure what a mid-90s Marty Brodeur card would be. I'm sure that would be pretty gosh darn good. So what else am I playing? So I've done some of that. Oh, taped the most recent game in our Pro Strategy Football 2021 series with Al Red Sox fan. We did the 60s AFL Championship between Oakland and Kansas City. You should go find that and watch. What a blast that game was to do. And Fred Arbanis is a hero in Kansas City. And, well, let's just take your word for it. It was a heck of a ball game, and that was so much fun to do. I really enjoyed doing those with Al. All right, so that's what I'm playing this week. Now let's get to the topic at hand. Johnny Smoke, by the way, a regular watcher of my stuff on YouTube, writes, "Hi, Ron, still watching your YouTube video replays. Considering accuracy, I'm not sure how this came up. This came up at the end of the year Blue Jays-Yankee game. Considering accuracy, random, without replacement, needs 67% within one standard deviation of the mean, and etc. Something that can be even closer would be random selection sampling without a replacement. For example, a batter has 300 plate appearances with his 300 results for a selection. As each result is selected, it isn't replaced, and his result table is reduced by 1 after each at-bat. The drawbacks: the managers will know when a player doesn't have any good results left in his result table. The next problem is the pitchers also have result tables. Each batter and pitcher have a matchup with different representative result sample sizes. So, to normalize for this, he feels you need a 50-50 system with equal representative table sizes, such as Stratomatic, and sampling with replacement, again, with the Stratomatic method. I'm not saying that Stratomatic is the end-all of having a game with accuracy, but any game with accuracy is using some form 50-50 system or is forcing accurate results. I'm going to completely disagree with that. Let me read the second part. The next inaccuracy in baseball games is no separation of playing performance with bases empty, runners on first, runners in scoring position with first base occupied, and runners in scoring position with first base open. I don't care how many opportunities a team has in a game in RISP. The team with the most hits will win 70%, and runners in scoring position will win 70% of the time. If two teams tie with the hits and runners in scoring position, it's a matter of then who drove in the most or made it up with the bases empty or runners on first base only home runs. This is why teams like the 69 Mets underperform a lot in baseball stat-based sim games. Thus can also explain some of the luck factor in wins and losses that appear in the Pythagorean theorem. As someone who's now played, and it's a very good observations, and one of the things that I've also talked with Kurt Berglund about, who helps design players for teams and seasons for Pine Tar Baseball, is that it's very tough, especially if you're doing a card and dice game, to get the mechanics right. I think what Johnny is trying to get at here is that how can a basic game or a medium game try to reproduce anything that can happen? Now, if you had someone, let's say a regular pitcher who has 1,100 possible results and a regular batter who's got anywhere from 600 to 700 results, and if you just started taking them away, it wouldn't happen. You get to the point where the pitchers would all give up hits and the batters would all give up, all have outs, and that's just really not how you want to do that. And so you have to randomize things to an extent. Now, when you look at the biggest game or the most popular game engines, the ones that have stood the strength of time, you look at APA, which is, of course, chart-based with 36 different play result numbers, with everything having pretty much an equal a 3.1% chance of happening per card. And so based on the charts, depending on that, which is what Johnny's talking about in the second part of that. I mean, that's how APA does its thing, because a 24 play result number is going to be a ground ball, and sometimes it could be a double play, and sometimes it could not be. Or the infamous 12. You get the play result number 12. It could be a single. It could be a strikeout. It could be a double play, depending on which chart you're looking at. Now, I've played enough action PC baseball to know that you are not being forced into a result for baseball. We've now done 2 pretty much full season replays, and the numbers are pretty much spot on, but you can have players who overdo it, and you can have players that underdo it. Jim Rice, for example, in my 78 baseball replay, hit a franchise, or tied the Red Sox franchise record with 58 homers. He hit 12 more than he did in real life, and he drove in 179, which broke the franchise record by 1. Now, RBI is just kind of a stroke of luck, as we find out over the years, as our understanding of how sabermetrics works. But I suppose when I read these comments before, it comes down to, what are you guys looking for in an engine? Do you want something that... are you looking at the macro numbers as far as what you want? Are you happy if the league batting averages are within a couple points? If teams that are supposed to contend actually contend? Do you want a surprise or two, such as 78? It would be the Rangers for me last year in the 82 replay, having the Orioles win the East. California won the West in the AL. And we had Montreal and Los Angeles in the National League. And the Expos won the World Series. They swept the Dodgers, and they beat Baltimore in 6. So 2 really full season replays, and we had something similar to what we got in real life, because if the Dodgers beat the Phillies in my soon-to-be National League Championship Series replay, then we'll have real life. Do the Yankees beat the Rangers? Do we get the real World Series? There's nothing wrong with that. Those teams had met in back-to-back World Series. Or are you looking to make sure, how much of the puzzle do you want to be right? I mean, one of the strengths of the Stratomatic system is that it's really a 50, 37, 13 system. Yes, you can either get results from card A or card B, and other game systems try to go to that to a certain extent. But the batter's results come off of 1. The pitchers and the fielders all share on the other card. And because it's a 3D6 system, one die obviously being for which column you're reading off of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, and the other one being a 2 roll through a 12 roll. And so 6, 7, and 8 obviously come up the most, so you're going to put the most common results there. When these, as opposed to APA, which you have an equal chance of rolling a 2-4 or a 5-6. So it comes down to having the charts being different. Most of the time you're reading the results off the bases empty charts, and then this, that, and the other thing. Because more than 6-sided die up until maybe 30 years ago, it wasn't that common to find. And if you lost your dice, then it was easy to go pull another one out of a box somewhere. A 6-sided dice were not uncommon. And so it was easy to build a system based on that. Now, what did I disagree with on the first part here? I think what Johnny's arguing for, and he will certainly correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not picking on him here by any way, stretch or form, is that he's looking for things to be right on a micro level. I've never felt, in all the time I've played Strat or Action PC, or Action PC, which is a closed engine, and that's a whole other kettle of fish right there, that any result is being forced on me. We play enough of the good teams that I trust the AI to do the right thing. I know in the hockey game, I did the 75-76 replay, and Brian Trottier overperformed by 30 points on this card, which was great because I got the Islanders into the Stanley Cup final. They lost in 5 to the Montreal Canadiens. I'll break my heart, but I feel like the result was an honest one. I don't think I could play anything as much as I do the Action PC Sports family if I felt like I was being forced into a result. Now, how do you translate that into a card and dice thing? Well, more modern game designs obviously use some 10-sided die, and so you can have 3 10-siders, and so you can have up to a percentage die. So potentially 1,000 different results. If you know that a pitcher made the strikeout 33% of the time, a roll between 0, 0, 1, and 333 would be a strikeout if you were able to get onto his card. But there's a lot of math and a lot of weighting, and obviously you're not pitching against yourself. That's why games are difficult to design, because first of all, you got to take the team that you don't play against yourself as far as teams go. I mean, you could, but as far as it, in a stock replay, the 61 Yankees aren't designed to pitch to the 61 Yankees. There's a league average, and there's a derivative of A and B and all that, and trying to get that. Well, meanwhile, the 61 Yankees aren't hitting off their Whitey Ford or Ralph Terry, or the 2000 Red Sox aren't hitting off Pedro Martinez, and the 63 Dodgers aren't hitting off of Don Drysdale or Sandy Koufax. They're hitting off of everybody else. I think if you were to eliminate, is that the type of thing that you want to have? How exact do you want it? I don't agree that it should be that exact. I think there should be some variability there, or else you can just go on to Baseball Reference and just read game logs, which is sometimes fun to do. But you want to have things vary to a degree. Now, some engines, and I'm not going to say who they are, I really don't want to see the 86 Pittsburgh Pirates beat out the New York Mets for first place, or the Seattle Mariners in 86 contend. It's happened in certain game engines, and I don't think it's all that realistic. So there's a line there between realism and fun. And so where is the line for you? Johnny seems to want it pretty accurate. And that's fine, and maybe you guys do too. I'm happy with overall numbers. If somebody underperforms by 20 points in batting average, I'm not all that concerned about it if it all comes out right. Then again, that's not forcing. Besides, if you're playing a card and dice game that doesn't have any computer helper at all, you're rolling the die. The die are random, and you're reacting to that randomness. Now, sometimes things aren't always designed as well as they should be, such as 1981-82 Wayne Gretzky, who is through 36 games of my replay, I believe it's 64 points for Edmonton, but he's nowhere near going to get to that 215 points he had in real life because he can't score. And they match him with Dave Lumley and Dave Hunter. And so, unless he's on the power play, he's not going to get enough chances to produce enough points to do so. That's a game design flaw. You can't, he can assist every time that he's on the ice if there's a goal, but you got to be able to make sure that you match him up with the right players to do that. Now, does that mean the game is flawed? It means it didn't get Gretzky right, because Gretzky is not part of the bell curve. That was an exceptional year. At the time, it was the best offensive hockey year in hockey history. He, I think, topped that once. I think he had 2 200-point seasons. And I think they figured out how to do that with Gretzky and Lemieux and the scoring-happy late 80s. I think they finally figured out how to get those right. But in 81, 82, no, it didn't really happen that way. But what... Again, when you play, I suppose, a single-team replay, you want your numbers to be right. But do you want them exact? Do you want them to be plus or minus 5%? You don't want them way off. If you're playing, let's say, the 86 Mets or the recent Golden State Warriors team, you want them to win their fair share of games. And I don't think any game engine kind of forces accurate results. It comes down to the card design, or on the PC, how do you break that down? And how do you get the league averages right? And so it comes down to good math. And if the general math is fine as far as I'm concerned, the rest of it's going to work out. I want there to be a variability in results. I don't necessarily want the same 4 teams to make the playoffs in baseball, or the same 8 teams in football, or this, that, and the other thing. Especially it's tough at football because you only have so many games and so many plays. So when I did the 78 NFL replay, I had Kansas City, whose offense was about as dormant as a dinosaur, somehow make the playoffs. And when Al Red Sox fan and I looked at it, or when Al Red Sox fan looked at it, they realized that they lost a handful of games by less than 3 points. Well, what's the difference between a 6-10 team and a 10-6 team? Could be as little as 4 points or 5 points. So, the other thing that I think that does come into it is, how do you manage, especially when you're doing a cards and dice thing? What are you looking to do? Are you trying to replicate stats? Or are you trying to win the game? Because whatever your own inherent bias is going to show up. When I'm doing a single team replay, such as if I had picked a Red Sox year, I want the Red Sox to win. That's why I'm doing this. And so I'm not looking at, okay, Joe Bob has 474 at-bats, and Joe Bob's 20 hits behind, and with 4 games to go, so the replay is inaccurate. No, I want to be, it's the win total I'm looking for, or can I improve on a performance? Those are the things that I'm looking for. It doesn't mean the game engine is flawed or trying to force you into a result. I'm managing to win the game. Let's go back to the old APA flyers. You are the manager. And dollars to donuts, I think if you looked at most people's replays, they're going to be fairly accurate. They're not going to be 100% accurate, but they're going to be fairly accurate. Digital Diamond, the late Digital Diamond game, I tried to force it in, trying to meld a batter's card into a pitcher's card. That engine had some flaws anyway, but the basic idea was there, and you could do it with the 3 10-sided percentage die. Or you could do it with, it all comes down to it. I've done some game design in baseball and didn't come into account the whole deal with you're not pitching to yourself, or you're not hitting against yourself. And so, you tell me in the comments, are you looking, what are you looking to replicate? Are you looking to replicate a team? Are you looking to do a stock replay where a lot of you do what ifs, and the stats really don't matter. It's all about the fun for that. And it can be with any sport. Would you be bothered? I told you, I got the 78 Chiefs into the wild card game. They finished 10-6 in a year that they should never have finished 10-6. Would that result bother you? Or would you, unless you're a Chiefs fan, you'd be thrilled with that? Or would you be fine with that if you know how they got there? Again, that's not a forcing thing, because we played a number of those games down the stretch. And so my job was to know their strengths and their weaknesses. Their strengths were that they ran. Their weaknesses was they couldn't throw. So you had to run with them. But again, I don't feel like the game is being forced into an accurate result. You look at a game like Roster Card, which breaks everything down into pretty much a pitcher-batter hybrid, and you roll 2 10-sided die to get the result, and then you might roll for fielding in that. I find that should be fairly accurate. The stuff I did with that game felt like that era of baseball, and for me anyway, that kind of goes into the feels category. Now, the second part of what you want to talk about kind of goes along with some of that being addressed in APA. So you take your basic result and you just go by the runners on first and third chart, or second and third chart, and APA is different from the bases empty. So you might, a 13 is going to be a strikeout in any situation, but you get a hit number, or you get like I said, the infamous 12, you're going to get different results. But I think in baseball, I've watched enough playoff baseball, and since I'm about to do some playoff baseball, you're right. If you don't hit with runners in scoring position, you're not going to win. Now, I'd be curious to see what the overall win percentage is for teams that do better in runners in scoring position. Is it 70% of the time? I'm not sure. I bet someone's done that sort of work. But he goes on to talk about why the 69 Mets underperformed a lot of baseball stat-based sim games. It's true, because they weren't a very strong hitting team. And the one thing I think that's very difficult for any system to get right is how teams were managed. Gil Hodges got so much out of that team. He also could pitch. Not Hodges, but when you go out there with Seaver and Kuzman and such, they were going to win their fair share of ball games and knew how to do it. Walter Alston with those 60s Dodgers teams, he knew how to get when to press the button. He knew how long to leave his starters, and that's why managers get paid to know how to make those right decisions. Earl Weaver, probably one of the best regular season managers of all time. And you could probably play that World Series between the Mets and the Orioles in 69 100 times. And I'm not sure how many times the Mets would actually win the bloody thing, because the Mets were a light-hitting team that got lucky at the right time and were able to produce runs in scoring position. But, I think it all depends on the game design. Now, APA has been redesigned because the formula is pretty much open 20, 30 times over by different clones. Replay is a cousin of APA. NP3, which is Bill Stafford's creation, took APA to the next level. It's a good tweener game. NPNG Plus, which you can find for free on the web, does a lot with platoon splits and all that. It's an easy engine to kind of figure out how to work and do. But I think what Johnny's looking for here is what game can I find that's going to replicate that style of baseball, whatever it is that he wants the most, what he would consider to be realistic. Would replay fit that bill? Certainly the more advanced versions of games, and again, Strap being the good example where you can get balks of wild pitches and super advanced and have all sorts of defensive things, and the master game for APA, that's probably more of his style. How right do you want to get it, and how easy would it be on a card and dice way to replicate what you're looking for? Teams that do well in runners and scoring position. How do you do that? I think it's easier to do the computer game. I don't think he feels that Action PC does that. For me, it really doesn't. Whatever's. But again, it depends on what's he looking for. Replay's a pretty advanced game, and I think that would come closest. But how would you do that in a cards and dice game without 4 or 5 dice rolls per player? One thing that Stratomatic does, I think, very well is the clutch rating and the ballpark ratings. So you can turn singles and hits into outs and outs into hits with 2 out and runners in scoring position. I think it works. Is it kind of clunky? Yes, but I think it works. How many dice rolls are you comfortable with for an at bat? How would you do that in football? How would you do that with different ratings for being in the red zone, or how would you card how teams do in the last 2 minutes of a half or a ball game? Tom Brady and Eli Manning, for instance, very good later part of when it mattered. Roger Staubach was the master of the fourth quarter comeback. How would you rake that through and not take a football game that takes a long time to play cards and dice and not make it any longer? Is that something that you would play? How do you do that without fudging the results, which is absolutely what any of the games I do play, I don't believe fudges the results. Again, in basketball, how do you account for, let's say, a college team, like a Duke, for instance? Stability. A team that might be up Duke might be down 3 or 4 with 2 minutes to go and knows how to do it, how to come back. A Golden State, a San Antonio, for instance. The Celtics didn't lose many games late because you had Larry Bird. How would you add a clutch factor to a player, a team, a shooter, and still make the game playable and fun? That's the other thing is, how Dave and I've talked about how realistic do you want your games, but how do you balance, or how would you like to see that fun and replayability balanced? I guess. Like I said, just because I don't agree with what Johnny's writing in the first part doesn't mean that he's wrong. Some people want that precision. And so how do you do that in a cards and dice game? So let us know in the comments how you'd like to do that, or if it's important to you. Because if you're doing like a what if, like what Al Red Sox fan does, or a one-off, what Dave's Classic Games is, my partner in crime, Dave Gardner, or a what if, then that doesn't matter. I think it comes down to playability. But for those of you who are hardcore seasoned replayers, and I guess I would include myself in that, what are you looking for? What's acceptable for you as far as that's concerned? Like I said, I'm just kind of happy if it feels like that era of baseball with the engine, and if the numbers kind of, if the macro numbers are what I feel to be close. If you want more precision, how do you, the tables I think would be there, and how would that be fun? I don't know. I think it's, just kind of food for thought type thing. Not picking on Johnny. I thought they were great comments, and I was going to do a video on it. And Dave said, I'm kind of busy delivering pizzas to Aunt Becky. Can you hold the phone for me this week? And so I said, sure. So let us know in the comments below what it is, if this made any sense to you whatsoever. And Johnny, thank you so much for all the times that you comment. I'm always very interested in what you have to say. So how to get a hold of us? Dave and I should be back together next week. By the way, we now have 452 members on the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/digitaldice. That's one way to get hold of us. www.digitaldice.com, the word TO, brings us right to our Spreaker page where you can listen to everything and anything. Or you can send us a text or leave a voicemail at 978-751-DICE. That's 978-751-3423. And Johnny, I hope you didn't think I was picking on you. I thought that was a great topic. I got to send a note to my buddy Roberto Savini to follow up on some questions. He's got some new stuff coming out. So if you're not a member of his Facebook group, join today. Just look it up. It's great. It's great. I've started to work on the summer of Tokyo. So thank you so much for joining us. Dave is back with me next time around for episode 58, Heinz 57 episode of the Digital Dice podcast. I'm Ron Juckett. Thank you so much for listening. Dave and I will talk to you the next time.